looking for your comments and your questions for our fantastic guests on today's show. Hello there, it's Sunday, it's Talkin Con, a cup of tea with an Englishman in San Diego. Welcome along. My name is Leonard Sultana, and each and every Sunday we talk Comic-Cons, con culture, and all the stuff and nonsense we get to enjoy at such shows. As the year has gone on, Talkin Con has evolved into something entirely different, where we've gotten some amazing guests on to talk about their careers, the way that their work has been affected by 2020, by the things that they have been keeping themselves occupied with over the course of this strange and intriguing year. As always, it's a roundtable. It's your show. We've got a couple of people who are jumping in already. Welcome along to Andrew English. Hello, all from London. It's great to have you joining us, Andrew. Aaron Neighbors. Hola from San Diego. Pleasure to have you. Toby is joining us. Morning. And also Michael P. as well. So the West Coast contingent is with us. It's great to have you along. Thank you so much indeed for your company. The show that we had yesterday, if you caught it, was with Stephanie Phillips, who is a writer of many genres and has been doing some incredible books for some amazing companies, including a relaunch of Tana for Heavy Metal magazine. We have been having a number of heavy metal talents on the show over the last couple of months. It's been a pleasure to talk to them, especially seeing how heavy metal has just blossomed and really grabbed the bull by the horns in 2020. One of the creators that is releasing something under the heavy metal banner is our first of two guests today. We are joined by Bob Fingerman. Hello there, sir. How the devil are you?
I'm doing very well. I was going to say good morning, but it's evening for you, so. It
is evening, yes. I mean, I know that we were on our communication on our email, and you were just going, right. So, well, I mean, if you're in San Diego as well, trust me, you are not the only person that gets confused by my social media handle. But no, I'm here in the very dark of Yorkshire, here in the UK. But yes, where are you based? Whereabouts in the country are you?
Los Angeles.
Right. Okay. So
as of November 2017. So
right.
Prior to that, New York, my whole life.
Okay. So we're talking two major hubs, and certainly two that have been severely affected by the events and the effects of this year. What's your current state of play at the moment when it comes to pandemic and lockdown and all of that stuff and nonsense?
Well, I would say I err on the side of caution. You know, I definitely, if you're seeing any pictures of large gatherings with no masks, you will not be finding me in those pictures. If you try to do a Where's Waldo or Where's Wally, I think as you have it. Yeah, it's suffice it to say the world has gotten a lot smaller, which I think is okay for the time being. Not for the.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason why we've got you on today is to talk about, like I say, the exciting project that you've got under the heavy metal banner. But as always with the show that I've been running for this year, I have been doing my 3 questions. It is Talkin Con, so you might as well keep with the brand. Number 1, it's a cup of tea with an Englishman in San Diego. I got my PG tips to hand. I've gone PG tips today. What is your beverage of choice today, sir?
Mine, I guess I could say it's George Clooney approved because it's an espresso. So it's
well. Listen, I mean, I saw the adverts and I thought George Clooney hawking coffee, and then I saw the article about him going, yeah, and I take all of that money and I spend it on satellites, keeping a track on dictators, and I'm going, why not? If you're gonna sell coffee, you might as well do it and get that regard. That's fair enough.
That's right. I'm doing my part.
You're doing your part. Absolutely. Question number 2 is: can you remember your first Comic-Con? The first one you went to, and was it as a pro or was it as a fan?
Well, it wasn't, I guess, strictly speaking, a Comic Con. I think the first one I went to was one of your more all over sci-fi, fantasy, comics, all of the above, and it was one of the pre-glamorous ones they used to have at local hotels in New York. And I think I was a freshman in high school, so I think I was either 14 or 15 at my first one. And I remember asking a professional a question. My only memory, it's the only one that's burned into my head, was I did the classic nerd question where I went up to a comic. It was the first comic artist I'd ever met and that I'd ever heard of. And I asked him the what pen do you draw with question, which I think is what every aspiring artist ever asks a creator they admire, like as if somehow that implement is going to be imbued with talent and not just and he kind of shot me down. So that's why it stuck with me. Is I made the mistake of saying that I was drawing with rapidographs, the technical pens, and without missing a beat, he said, "No real artist uses those."
Oh, good Lord.
so it kind of stuck with me.
I'm just going to say, it's the first question you ask, and that's the kind of response you get. I mean, I have asked a similar question when it comes to to writers, just sort of like, what's your the kind of program that you use? I mean, is it Notepad or something? I guess. Yeah, as long as you get it down, that's fine. So I think I got a slightly more responsive person for my first question than you did. I mean, that's a bit. I'm glad that you haven't named and shamed. So that's.
Yeah, no, I'm not naming names, but he did. He crushed a child's spirit, and you can't put a price on that.
So. Fair enough. And the third question I've been asking is, obviously, in the intervening years, heading to Comic-Cons, you've gotten the chance to meet. Hopefully some idols, some people that have influenced the work that you've done over the years.
I know every single face that was in your opening credits. So yeah. So,
well, there you go.
Including Mr. Stashwick a little bit. So.
Well, I mean, he has been incredibly generous to come on the show, considering I kind of accosted him outside of Disney D23. I was wearing board shorts. I couldn't look more like an English tourist if I tried. I mean, I was beaten, lobster red, the whole bit. And I just kind of went, I know you off the telly. Come here and talk to me for 5 minutes. And he just went, yeah, fine. And he just took it in his stride. So no, I'm a big fan.
Well, this will make you feel a little better. I accosted him outside a men's toilet at farmers market. So,
so fair enough.
So I think that shows just what a generous human he is. That he
absolutely. Yeah. The question the third question is those moments though when you have found yourself a little bit cottonmouthed and a little bit weak at the knees when you have met an idol. Those memorable moments with your influences.
Yeah, well, actually, over the years, I'll say I'm generally not very shy about that kind of thing. But the one time where I met someone who was a lifelong idol, I mean, somebody I had been worshiping since I was in the single digits, and that was Sergio Aragonés.
Wow.
And I had been told that he was extremely approachable. But it was all on me. When I went over to introduce myself, I really choked. And so it was a real amazing turn of fate, that I got to work for Mad Magazine for a while, and we became friendly. You know, suddenly when I would see Sergio, he would wave and hello, Bob, and that, believe me, that still blows my mind. You know, that I went from being kind of like to, you know, being able to embrace him when I see him in public. It's so that's a pretty sweet thing. And that, if you had told me that as a child, I would have said that'll never happen. So that was pretty cool.
Wow. Excellent stuff. Like I say, it's been a varied and long career for yourself, working, like you say, for a number of publishers, and doing some incredible work over the years. But you have done work for heavy metal, and it's there you've returned to for the project that we're going to be talking about today, which is Dotty's Inferno. It's been announced as part of the Virus imprint, which, when you read the actual synopsis of the story, it seems like a strange fit, because when I got told about what Virus was going to be all about, it was going to be cutting edge stories. It was going to be it's kind of stretching the boundaries of what heavy metal would be doing. This seems more suited perhaps for the main title, perhaps, or where it finds its home. If you could kind of give us a little bit of a breakdown, an overview of Dotty's Inferno, please.
To use the local vernacular, the elevator pitch.
Indeed.
It's about a character named Dottie, who in life was a call girl, or escort, if you want to use the more polite term, and finds herself in death working in the new admissions office in hell. I think
that's it. Fair enough. This is from the frames that I've seen. Unfortunately, I'm having some technical issues with one of the programs, which I would usually bring up some graphics at this point. So I'd usually show what I can. But from what I've learned about the book, it's something that, like you say, it can be distilled into that elevator pitch, but it can go very much all over the place in terms of the approach, considering that I know one of the quotes that you used in the release was, even before the current situation, the world was going to hell in a handbasket. Why not make the best of it? Hell is my happy place.
Right.
That why is hell your happy place?
Well, I think because I have the authorship of it. So for me, it's not as dire as it's been portrayed. It's still not necessarily fun for the people who are living there, but for me, or I should say after living there. But since mine is a comical approach, it just, for me, it was happy because it's a chance to draw funny little demons and weird sort of slapsticky situations. And, you know, it's not the miserable version of hell. It's the comedically miserable version of hell. So for me, that's fun.
What would you say are the touchstones for what you're doing with Dotty's Inferno? Because when I read the initial release, I instantly had visions of Beetlejuice. That kind of the section when they go into the administration of the afterlife.
That's interesting.
I mean, yeah. What was your personal touch points of what you were wanting to do with the book?
Well, I mean, I think it's very on brand for me to take extraordinary things and try to kind of bring them down to a very relatable, very quotidian kind of presentation. Years ago, I did a Hellboy story for Hellboy Weird Tales. And, you know, those were things where you got to write whatever you wanted, pretty much. And in my story, Hellboy battled a vending machine that took his money. Because to me, that's a foe that he couldn't beat with his fists. It was but it was also relatable. Everybody's put money into a vending machine and not gotten what they wanted at some point in their life. I did a Star Wars story years ago about Jawas, and it was about selling extended warranties for the droids. So it's kind of something, I don't know what this says about me, but I like things where they're a weird, fantastical thing, but made relatable. So that's kind of what I wanted to do with the way I portrayed hell. Is I think it's very relatable. I mean, Dottie is in hell. You've got demons, you've got all kinds of things, but she does work in an office. She has to do errands. You know, one story is about her basically just having a headache on the job and going off to a pharmacy. And then, of course, it turns into a crazy psychedelic trip. But these are all things where I think they're relatable insertion points for the reader. So, and I think that's just kind of my approach to this kind of thing is how can you slot yourself into a bizarre scenario?
Yeah. I mean, another one of the touch points I went to is one of my favorite writers, which is Robert Rankin. Who I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but he's somebody that, yeah, does a very similar thing where he kind of has that kind of, I'm not going to say pedestrian, but a relatable, real world kind of scenario, but then just transposes it into, or has the protagonists find themselves in a fantastical kind of scenario. So that was another kind of touch point just from reading what I saw of it.
Well, oh, sorry.
No, carry on.
Oh, you're the guest. I was well, as a guest, it's my right to step all over your words. Now, I don't want to be rude, but just to kind of, I think, put it in perspective, my favorite writer is Philip K. Dick. And the thing about his work above all other sci-fi is, for me, was the fact that, again, he wrote very relatable protagonists because they weren't space soldiers or scientists or this or that. They were usually some schmuck who worked in a typewriter repair shop, or, you know, they were all these people who had major events thrust upon them, but never were seeking them out themselves. You know, there's nobody's looking for glory in a Philip K. Dick book. They're just trying to survive the onslaught of misery that he, as the sadist he was, would dump all over them. So I think that's kind of where my head's at too. So
fair enough. Yeah, and the third one touchstone, which I'm going to just bring up just before we move on, was Brazil.
Oh yeah, another favorite.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm guessing there was that. What is it about administration that just kind of like seems like an absolute nightmare for you?
Well, I think it's just probably it's the sameness of it. You know exactly what's going to happen every single day. You know, you're cataloging, you're filing, you're administering. I mean, it's right there. You're in administration, you're administering. You have a very kind of proscribed life.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's also where was having fun with Dottie is, on the surface, it would seem that's what she has, but she spends all of maybe 6 panels in the entire book at her desk, because that would be very boring for the readers to see her actually doing her job. It's all about her being away from her job that makes the stories hopefully fun and interesting for the readers. So
fair enough. Why a call girl?
Well, that's a good question. I think I would have a better answer that really slotted and ready to go. I wanted, well, for her origin story, I wanted her to be in a situation, in a way, the most hellish situation for her is her origin story of how she died, where I wanted to show right away that she could outwit a bad situation, because she's a smart character, and you know, the thing about her is she's got a good attitude about things, but her death story is her pimp sends her to meet with a single client, and it turns out to be a hotel room full of men, and she does not want to do that, so she ends up outwitting them in a very, again, kind of comical, strange way. But then as she's outwitted them, when she leaves, she slips in a drunk's vomit and breaks her neck. So
Okay.
it's some people are either saying I have to read this book, or now the other people listening are saying I don't want to read this book. So,
I don't know, because it shows that she's somebody who lives on her wits. That she keeps sort of her eyes open, even if it's not down when there's a pool of drunk's vomit that happens to be lying around. I'm guessing it's that kind of sort of awareness and self-awareness, which kind of keeps her propelled through the inferno, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. She's been dealt a hand, and she's dealing with it pretty much as she would in life. You know, it's just she very much goes about her business, keeps her head up or down if she needs to. But yeah, I wanted to portray someone who, the thing is, this is, and it's even discussed right in the prologue of the book, she doesn't belong in hell. She's not a bad person. She never did anyone any harm. It's all about those pesky rules of what gets you into heaven and gets you into hell. And just by the sheer nature of her, and I think actually now I'm answering my own, or answering your question, just by the nature of her having been a sex worker is why she's in hell, even though she never hurt a soul. So
yeah. Well, I'm really curious as to the relationship then with heavy metal, and also with the virus imprint. Why was heavy metal the home for this particular book? What made it the perfect fit?
Well, I mean, in a huge part, it would be my love affair with that magazine since its inception. Sure. I mean, this is where I'm dating myself. But that magazine debuted 1977 was a big year between Star Wars and heavy metal. Two extremely pivotal things within weeks of each other came out. And so heavy metal debuted when I was in junior high school, and it literally changed my life. Because I was never a superhero kid. I was more of a Mad Magazine and humor comics kind of kid. And so superheroes just didn't really pull me in. But when heavy metal came out and I saw all the amazing work being done by all of those European artists, Mobius and Tardi, and the list goes on. And of course, and here's where I'll lift my coffee and toast the memory of the great Richard Corbin. Okay, he was not European, but rest in peace, Richard, one of my absolute all-time heroes. But when I saw their work, that really clarified for me what I wanted to do with my life creatively, because I saw the potential there that I had never seen for comics before. These things that were the most incredibly drawn I'd ever seen. I mean, at that age, story was secondary, and I just was carried along by how beautiful, particularly Mobius. I'd never seen anything like it. So, basically when heavy metal came along, that suddenly became one of those, I am going to work for this magazine. This magazine is going to publish my work goals. And so, fast forward, I guess 12 years, 11 years, maybe, I don't know. But I started having my work appear in heavy metal, I think in 1988. And, you know, it was sporadic, but that felt like such a benediction. You know, it was kind of like, I'm in heavy metal. I must be kind of okay at what I'm doing. And, you know, so keeping that relationship, I mean, I kind of disappeared from its pages for many years, but it was always the plan to get back in there. And Dottie seemed like a good fit to have because they were self-contained, but building towards something bigger. And so when it really became clear that I wanted to do a book, they were the choice. You know, they'd already run a couple of the stories in the magazine. And so I said to them, would you be interested in doing the collection? And that was right around when Virus was just, I guess, being conceptualized, because I didn't know whether it would be under the heavy metal imprint but it just seemed like the only home. It was not just a good home, but that's where I needed it to be. So unfortunately, they were receptive, and so.
What was the reaction when you told them the elevator pitch as you described it?
Well, I mean, I didn't really have to do that because at that point, some of the stories were already done, so I got to just submit the stories, and you know, that way they could see whether they either liked it or didn't like it. Fortunately, they did, because originally the stories in a somewhat different form were done for a French comics magazine, and they're a little saucier in the French one. That was actually that was part of the. There was an obligatory. I don't know if you've ever seen the old Harvey Kurtzman comic, Little Annie Fanny, that he and Will Elder had done for Playboy, but there was a certain, you know, especially in the later years, there was an obligatory. She always had to end up having sex with somebody. And that was kind of the way it was with the French version of Dottie. And that wasn't quite where my head was at. That was fulfilling the obligation of the magazine.
Yeah.
So the ones that are actually collected in the book were revised, because to me it was funnier and more interesting if she doesn't. You know, that's, in a way, it feels predictable, especially what she was in life. You think, oh, okay, here it comes. And no, it doesn't. You know, it's not about that. The other thing with the book was there is copious nudity in it, but it's not about sex. You know, I think this is especially, it's that weird kind of the puritanical roots of America. We've never gotten past them. And there's this conflation of nudity equals sex. To me, nudity equals perdition. You know, that's part of the punishment. You know, when you look at great paintings of hell, everyone's basically running around or roasting nude. So that was one of the traditions I kept. But yeah, so, you know, I think it's a book about subverting expectations hopefully from the readers.
Well, I think that's what you get from heavy metal across the board. I mean, I always find it interesting hearing about American creators' relationship with heavy metal. It's almost like the books that or the ways that they were able to get books published in the States. The only way that they could kind of get around, like you say, the superhero and the normal way of doing comics or telling comic stories. The other ways that you could do it was go for the West Coast underground or heavy metal and kind of find a way of stretching the boundaries and heading into, like you say, different territories, adult themes, by kind of almost sneaking under the radar and heading towards what heavy metal was doing. We've got a couple of people who've gotten some questions in already. We've got Henry Barajaras joining us. There, Henry.
Hey, Henry. I know Henry.
Oh, yes. Although he does ask a question, and I'm curious to know what your answer is. Do you belong in hell, Fingerman?
Probably.
Do you belong in hell?
Well, if it's my version of hell, yes. If it's the traditional version, no. I don't think I've done anything that really would warrant my getting sent there. But by my own rules, I would end up there. I think just, you know, again, if you go with sort of the codified stuff of impure thoughts or this and that, then yeah, I mean, I've been paving my way to hell forever. But thoughts, yes. Deeds, not so much.
And what would your role be in hell, if you can imagine? Would you be as part of the administration, or would you find yourself?
I think so. Yeah, I'd probably be cleaning toilets in the men's room there or something. I don't think I would be like on a rack being stretched for eternity or red hot pokers or anything that. But it would probably be something demeaning and yeah, rote.
Yeah. What virus is doing is, as you've described, in case anyone's watching and perhaps missed some of the earlier virus conversations that we had, it is about they're taking complete stories, or they're not editorializing at all to any degree. They're kind of accepting stories to print. Which kind of asks the question then, how far would you want to continue Dottie's stories in future episodes?
I would love to. You know, the thing is, I would like to broaden out the landscape of hell. You know, Dottie is the principal story, but then there are also some backup stories in the book of these two sewer workers named Ralph and Borax, who are just a couple of demons. Because the other thing I wanted to show is that hell is just as punishing for the people that, or the demons that work there, as the souls in perdition. You know, it's so there's a lot more stuff I'd like to do with hell. I mean, that's the thing about hell, is it's an infinite landscape. So yeah, I'd love to do more Dottie stories and more Ralph and Borax stories and some of the other characters. There's a character who has a little appearance in one of the stories who's a butcher, kind of modeled on Ernest Borgnine, and I wanted to do some stories about his life. And yeah, there's just a lot I'd like to do with it.
Excellent. And I mean, is there other projects that you would like to bring to heavy metal? Are you somebody that likes to have different stories percolating at the same time, or are you somebody that likes to focus on a specific project at a time and kind of muscle on and get that done?
I like to have usually a few things going at once, partly because if you get a little sort of stalled on one, you can shift to another rather than just being stalled. So, you know, right now I'm currently working on a few things. Some of them are just writing projects, because those are just as important to me as comics. I did not talk with Matt before this, whether I'm at liberty to talk about this or not. So,
well, he's not here now, so.
Well, maybe we'll wait. I mean, if I'm still going to be on when he's on, then we can maybe talk about one of the coming projects. But I'm not, like I say, I'm not sure if I'm at liberty. But I do have more things in the pipeline. I can't say more. There is more in the pipeline with heavy metal, of a very different nature. So,
and certainly with what I'm looking forward. I mean, like I say, we've got this book that's coming from under the Virus imprint, but you've also managed to rope in some really high-profile names to do pin-up style art for the book.
Yeah, I'm quite shameless about that.
Tell me about it. I mean, Howard Shakin, Dave Johnson, Mike Mignola, Dan Panosian, Bill Sienkiewicz. That's a hell of a roster of demons right there. To do the artwork. I mean, were these people that you called on, friends and colleagues, or were they kind of knocking on your door to do some work for the book?
No, nobody was knocking on my door, but they're all friends, and they're all very generous friends. So they were very generous with their talents there. Yeah, I mean, it was as simple as that. It was just, I mean, this is one of those things where it's like they're friends of mine, but I am a friend and fan or admirer of them. So, you know, what's in a way, what's more, it's, how do you say this without it sounding like just wanting your ego? It's not about that. It's just, it's so much fun to see their interpretations of my characters. You know, I used to do a book called Minimum Wage, and one of the features of Minimum Wage, and I don't even remember where this idea popped in my head, was to get people to do these, you know, quote unquote pinups. I don't think anyone's actually razoring them out of the book and pinning them up, but you know, and I had, again, it was this rogues gallery of incredible talent that was very generous about contributing. Behind me, over my head there, right about where my finger is, that's a Kevin Nolan back cover for Minimum Wage. And so, yeah, over the years, I've just been very lucky about getting incredible people to be generous with drawing their versions of my humble little characters. So it's great. I mean, it's, to me, it's just fun. And hopefully, I think it is, but hopefully it's fun for the readers.
Absolutely. I tried zooming in so people could actually see the, I soloed you on screen, at which point I noticed my branding was completely covering it. So I was clicking buttons just to try and get the branding off so people could actually see the Kevin Nolan in the background.
I'll send you a JPEG for your purposes later.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. This year has been a trying year. And certainly a question that I've been asking creators over the course of the summer is how they have been affected and how their work has been affected. Not only just on that level of actually knuckling down and getting the work done and powering through the stresses of the year, but also how you feel that your work can and would be affected by the events of 2020. In putting this book together, I mean, I'm not sure what the timeline has been of how long you've been working on the book and how your perspective of it has changed, because we are seeing numerous demons running amok in 2020 in real life. I'm just curious how your own work you feel may be affected by the year.
Yeah, I mean, I can't help but feel that, well, you know, just the whole hell is my happy place thing says a lot about the current state of the world, that retreating into perdition would somehow seem a more pleasant prospect. Yeah, I mean, it's been, you know, 2020 is just, to me, it's sort of the finale of what I think has been 4 extremely trying years.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't want to bring politics into this, but the spectacle of not just Trump, but everything that the Trump administration has brought to the surface. You know, these are things, there's a lot of things that are in play that clearly were roiling under the surface before they became emboldened enough to become part of life. But, you know, when you throw in Trump, you throw in this QAnon stuff, you throw in the pandemic, you know, it's just so many things that have been very trying to deal with if you're, you know, especially if you're someone like me. And this is not necessarily a good thing, but I've been a news junkie for many, many years. And I have really learned in the last few years in particular that I think I finally understand the ignorance is bliss cliche, because being well informed is not a blissful thing. You know, it's very dispiriting. So I'm sure it has layered itself into my work in ways that maybe will be clearer as time moves on. It's hard to say, you know, some of it is retreating away from reality. You know, it's like, okay, I'm going to go into my little fantasy world and play with my little fantasy characters and all that. But I bet there are underpinnings that I'm not even aware of, just things that are a little bit opaque to me. I think I'm a fairly self-aware creator, but holistically, it's sometimes hard to take in the bigger picture when you're right there. I mean, that's the thing about perspective. It always comes later. So, you know, there's a thing I'm working on a new graphic novel right now, which is very different. And I've always in my work kept topical stuff out of the work because it dates, you know, it dates very quickly. But there's little seasonings of it. You know, it's a book that is set in 2018. So that way I can have it be pre-2020, but still there are little glimmerings of kind of the mindset, at least of a certain kind of character. That's a story where two of the characters they're pretty much freshly out of university. They're maybe 22, 23-year-olds. And so, you know, they're at that age where they're kind of trying to shelter themselves from dwelling too much on reality, but it's creeping in and they're not happy about it. But even there, you know, I'm not putting anything that by the time the book sees print, people will be saying, I barely remember that, you know?
Yeah. Fair enough. I think, I mean, to be fair, we've got a comment which kind of sums up a lot of feelings, certainly for myself, and it's not just religious people. Solicitor Smeg is saying, "I need a hell is my happy place T-shirt for when religious people knock on my door." I think hell is my happy place. It could be summed up for not just religion, but a whole bunch. A lot of the demons are running amok, and hopefully we can find solace in stories like Dottie's Inferno. You were saying, or you're wondering if we could get some kind of talking about another project that you were thinking or you are doing with heavy metal, and the only person that we can get any kind of permission from is Matthew Medney, who is now joining us. Hello there, Matthew. How the devil are you, sir?
Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing? Hey, Bob.
I will let Bob ask the question of Matthew whether it's okay to talk about this project.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I was at liberty to say what's in the pipeline for 2021. So
you can talk away as much as you'd like.
Oh, fantastic. All right. Well, in that case, yeah, I'm very excited that a revised edition of one of my novels will be coming back into print via Heavy Metal's new prose line. So that's exciting. My novel Pariah, which I've had 10 years to really think about all the things that I could do to make it even better than it was. And so now I'm in the process of doing substantial revisions for what will be a truly author-approved edition.
Oh, fantastic. Excellent stuff. So I don't know if that's breaking news, but
yeah, you heard it here first.
Heard it here first. That's fantastic. Excellent stuff. Well, looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to reading Dottie's Inferno. If anything, because like I say, if it comes from anywhere near the touch points which I mentioned earlier, it's going to be in my ballpark. I'm very much interested in seeing what's going to be coming up. Chris Longo is joining us. He's now putting exclamation marks on the screen. He's just going, "Oh, right, okay." So you could have warned him, I suspect. So there we go. Andrew English is also stating, so we're getting a director's cut of Pariah. So that's
yes, indeed, absolutely. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. And Clydeen Nee is joining us as well. Love heavy metal. Looking forward to new books. Always great to have Clydeen joining us. Excellent stuff. So there we go. Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much indeed for coming on. And like I say, looking forward to Doss's Inferno, and here's to all of the success that comes with it.
Yes, thank you so much.
Excellent stuff.
Cheers.
Enjoy the rest of your day, sir.
Will do.
Excellent.
Later, Bob.
Bye,
Take
Matt.
care. So there you go. A bit of news there for anyone who's watching. And to be fair, it's kind of in keeping when it comes to heavy metal, because what you're doing with heavy metal is just been remarkable over the last year and a half. Certainly for myself, it started when the editorial hires with the announcement of Virus, and just the energy that's coming out of the magazine right now is just absolutely phenomenal. So it's a pleasure to have you joining us. For everyone who's perhaps not familiar, this is the CEO of Heavy Metal Magazine, Matthew Medney. Now, it's got to be said, when we were first introduced on by email, it was Matt Medney. So I don't want to slip up, and because
Either one's cool with me.
Fair enough, because I get people calling me Lenny or Len, and it's Leonard. So I always get just to make sure. But there we go. Excellent stuff.
You end up calling me Medney anyway, so Matthew's fine.
Fair enough. Well, it's a pleasure to have you joining us. I asked the questions of Bob, and we'll ask the questions of yourself, because these are the three that I've been starting my interviews with throughout the course of this run of Talkin Con. Number one, because it is a cup of tea with an Englishman in San Diego. My cup of tea is now has gone cold, but it's still there.
I have my chai latte in honor.
There you go. So you have your beverage. Excellent stuff. The second question is your memory of your first Comic-Con, and whether it was as a pro or as a fan.
It was definitely as a fan. New York Comic-Con. I grew up in Manhattan, in Stuyvesant Town on the Lower East Side. So I've been to many a New York Comic-Con. I actually haven't been to San Diego Comic-Con yet. This was going to be my first year running the heavy metal table, which was going to be so exciting, and just getting pushed off a year. It's just like an astronaut being told to abort right before his first flight. So I'm equally as excited for San Diego next year. But New York, it's a jungle of inspiration. That's really, when I was there, the Javits Center is just so perfectly designed to hold, all of us in this conundrum of a Tetris board that is the Javits Center, if you've been there.
Well, I was scheduled to go. I keep getting asked by the guys from Repop to go across, and I was scheduled to go last year, except the company that I booked my flights with managed to go under exactly 7 days prior to my flight. So
fantastic.
That's fate and destiny telling me that New York Comic Con was not on my cards that particular year. And question number 3 is about those idols and those influences that you have gotten to meet at conventions over the years. Those ones that were those memorable moments where perhaps you have lost the will to talk incoherent sentences with those heroes, those memories of people that you've met at cons.
I would say, in light of this last week, it's less the people I've met at cons and more the people I've met as the CEO of Heavy Metal. And I, had the honor of interviewing Richard Corbin for issue 302. And the unfortunate, situation with his complications with his heart surgery, really made me reflect what it was like to talk to someone like that, to talk to someone of that, gift. He was touched by another power with the way that he saw art and the way that he saw creative and all that. all of that was just, incredible to interview him for issue 301 when we were wrapping up Murky World, which was his, latest run in the magazine. So, for me, I think that would be the one that sticks with me the most, especially now.
Yeah, excellent stuff. What I really was touched by was just the plethora of support and tributes that poured out. Very much loved, and someone who, we're going to miss. Heavy Metal magazine, like I said, is one that has picked up so much energy over the last year and a half. And then it coincides with 2020 and the events of this year. But you've barreled on through. You've, like I say, the releases that you've brought out with Virus, the talent pool that you've pulled in to bring books out. What was your thinking when the industry started to shift and change, and comic bookshops were closing and the market was shifting under everyone's feet this year? What was your thoughts on how heavy metal was going to weather the storm, as it were?
Yeah, back in March, April, when it started becoming apparent that this wasn't going to be a couple of weeks, that it was going to be, something bigger. And even then, we could never have imagined what it is today. But I held pretty tight from day one that we couldn't allow a company as small and as nimble and, where every dollar matters, to be affected by something like this. We would have to adapt. We couldn't, pull back and wait it out. It was always about how do we charge ahead with a new tactic rather than how do we retreat and hold. So that was always a thought from the beginning. And for me, it was, the pandemic meant one main thing: people are going to need more content. And as the, TV and film production started getting put on hold, and as other things started becoming harder and harder to do because of the situation, the silver lining, or the blessing of the industry that we're in, is that everything is done with a 0-point failure, is what I like to call it. Every aspect of a comic book is done by people that are never in the same place. So the ability to produce a book hasn't changed. Just the ability to get it out to people has changed. So we've just been focusing on our e-commerce and growing that, and growing the ability for somebody to buy a book on our website, and then I'll ship it directly to them to combat the store issues, or, looking for, better digital solutions if someone just wants to read rather than hold it. But it's always been, and between myself and Chris Longo and David Irwin, our chief creative overlord, it's just, come on, we're heavy metal. You can't have officers. You need a chief creative overlord. And it's just the way it is. And all of us have always been so aligned on the idea that it's full steam ahead and find solutions, not Band-Aid problems.
That makes sense. I think the other thing that's kind of really excited me as well about what heavy metal has been doing is, as well as respecting and honoring the talents that have made heavy metal what it is over its long legacy, you're embracing stories and storytellers which are doing some really exciting things, brand new talent, and bringing them into the fold. So it's a real kind of a hand-holding of the two eras of heavy metal.
Very important to us, right?
Absolutely.
No, I was just going to say, it's so great that you see that, because that's something that, we hold really dear to us, is, we don't want to shock our fan base in a way that, we're not paying respect.
Yeah. You're not throwing cold water over them and just saying, and we're just starting afresh. It's very much, it's almost like taking an old classic, the car out of the garage and stripping it down and putting a nice clean engine on it and putting a new paint job on it and giving it a real boost of life.
Yeah, and sometimes with that you need a new engine, but sometimes you just need to make the thing that happened that got you there just look nicer again, right? So that's why we bring Frazetta and his art back, and his covers start next year, and we brought Glenn Fabry back, and he did a cover for 300, and we have the Corbin that was running up until 301, and we were going to do more, but obviously life comes. And but with all of that, bring in other creators from that are still operating today, but grew their their legacy in the 90s and 2000s between the Bart Sears and the Ron Mars and the Christopher Priests, and then bring in even newer generations that are making their name now, like the Steve Orlandos and the Blake Northcotts and the Brendan Columbuses and the Dylan Sprouses and the Dan Foglers. And it's really important to us that we look at the different, periods of time and find the people that meant something to people in those times, and, cultivating them together as our new, creative arm at heavy metal.
Sure. When Virus got announced, I mean, that for me was one of the most exciting elements of it, because it was another avenue for you to tell heavy metal stories. And also now finding out that you're doing prose novels, starting off with your own title, which is exciting stuff. What were the conversations like when it came to putting these extended arms to the heavy metal magazine? Because obviously you would like we talk about the sprucing up of the old engine and keeping that nicely running. That would be enough for a company to focus on getting that, sweet as a nut. But then to also branch out and do these other elements. What were the conversations like in making sure that those were serviced as well as the core title?
It's a great question.
Okay.
Real quick, Leonard, I'm getting texts from a few friends saying that the YouTube stream stopped.
Yes, we have ourselves the first half an hour. I actually put it on Twitter, and I did mention it to Chris. The first half is public, and then we continue it for the Patreon supporters. We upload the whole thing on Wednesday.
Oh, I love it. Hello, Patreon supporters.
There we are. Because I am not a creator myself, I cannot draw, I cannot write to any degree. This is kind of my way of saying thank you to my Patreon supporters by giving them the full episode, and then we upload the whole thing on Wednesday for everybody else.
Love it. No, well.
No.
Continue supporting Leonard at Englishman, SDCC.
Thank you.
But back to your point, and I have a copy of my novel here, which is Beyond Future. And the irony of the whole thing is I started writing this 5 years ago with my best friend John Connolly, who's a aerospace engineer at Lockheed Martin. And, when we started writing this, the idea was to write the most scientifically accurate, far future space adventure you can. So it took years to research and develop technologies that would, adhere to current day scientific journals with reasonable assumptions of how they would scale up in the coming decades. And I always thought, and I'm always a visual person, and I always like to, make a statement that I like to write the 1,000 words of a photo. So I always get to have art in my books, even before heavy metal. So when I was producing the book before I took the role, it almost felt like it was too perfect not to do it as a heavy metal book. And then, creators like Blake Northcott and Bob Fingerman start telling me that they have prose novels that they would love to, bring to the world through heavy metal. And I was like, this is just another medium for people who like this type of content to experience it in. And I was like, have to go for it. And same thing with Virus and all of our, subsections of content. It's about, trying a lot of things very quickly and seeing what works and then doubling down on those. And, a great company is one that takes risks and assesses their success and then moves in the correct direction as quickly as possible. And I think that's what we've been doing since I took over. And with Kuiper, what was cool is we've been getting a lot of praise about the validity of science. Screen Rant said it's the most scientifically accurate spaceship ever in a science fiction novel. And we've had some other, really great feedback on it. And to me, that's what I cared about, right? I cared about the science because there's too many stories out there that are trying to help us understand how and where we can go, but don't take into consideration the realities of what that is. Like the Jetsons, great story, but we don't have flying Corvettes and we never will. And just taking...
I'm still waiting for my jetpack. Something's gone horribly wrong where my jetpack has not been delivered in the post.
But Boba Fett has it over in The Mandalorian.
What the hell?
But yeah, no, I mean, it's prose books have always been a great passion of mine. I was a huge J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter fan growing up. I would listen to the books by Jim Dale, and I'd see the movies before Chris Columbus ever made them. And that to me is like where creativity thrives, is when you can read words and see the art, right? You don't need the art to see it. And while graphic novels are incredible and I love them, and comics are even better, there is a place for great prose that, touch the worlds that we do, which is science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And if you go back and research the magazine, we had tons of short prose stories in the late 70s, early 80s, not just interviews, but, stories that were prose. And, I'm going back to what we were saying before. It's not that I'm necessarily trying anything that heavy metal hasn't done. I'm just bringing back things that we used to do that I feel passionate about.
Absolutely. I find it interesting that the conversation that we've had so far, I mean, we had Bob Fingerman talking about Philip K. Dick and that kind of that sense of the science fiction which deals with the everyman. And then you have yours, which is Alfred Bester, which is a name that came up in another interview which you did about this project. And I find it interesting that it's touching on those two very interesting sci-fi writers, which were definitely dealing with pushing the boundaries of how technology and science affects society.
I would add Gene Roddenberry to that, because I always talk about how Gene was massively influential to me with how he took real world political conundrums and issues and turn them into science fiction story arcs. And the one that I always tell at every interview is with Captain Kirk in the original Star Trek, where he's the ambassador mediator between the left white, right black, and the left black, right white face people, and how he has to tell them that they're the same and that these people all need to figure out a way to work together. And it's an episode that came out during the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King. And that always to me was the epitome of what science fiction can do, which is take a real problem that people have a really hard time conversing about, remove the humanity, and tell it in another light to help people understand the gravity of the issue, and then figure out a new way for them to debate and have conversation about the topic. And that's what I think we did really well in Kuiper. Aside from the science, which is my nerdism, I think that we, tackle some really interesting political forks that we're having in society today. And we do it through alien races and a one world government called the World Council. And when you read it, you start thinking about these things that are holding up our society today and how we can solve them. And, a great book or story isn't one that answers those questions, but it helps you pose the right ones to have conversation about.
Good point. I mean, I mean, just so that we're kind of talking about the book instead of actually or skirting around the actual topic of the book and what the book's about, because it's actually it's a number of projects all under the banner of Beyond Kuiper, because we've got the prose novel itself, we've got the Darkwing series as well, which I understand it's part of the same universe.
It's part of the same universe. You know, the best way to put it is Darkwing is like our Guardians of the Galaxy. It's in a different part. It's it has its own story arc, its own characters, and there will be at some point in the future where they all converge. But right now, they take on their own stories. They're happening almost simultaneously. The people of the Darkwing are the Quails that live on the planet of Tiberius, and you know, Captain Benedict Gunn is piloting this planet ship across the stars, trying to find a new solar system for the planet to park at because a black hole ate its sun.
Of course, as it is. And then you've got the audiobook as well. So we've got a whole bunch of different ways that people can enjoy the story or take it on board. If you can give us a bit of an overview of Beyond Kuiper then, because I've read the first half of the book, and I mean, it rips along an incredible pace. It's a really fast-paced book. It reads incredibly well. But if you can give people kind of an overview of Beyond Kuiper.
Yeah, for those that may have heard of it, there's a ring of asteroids around our solar system called the Kuiper Belt, and it lays right outside of Neptune. It's actually where Pluto and other protoplanets live, and they orbit in a circular fashion around our solar system, almost encapsulating it. And astrophysicists and scientists in our world call it almost the first line of defense for Earth. As interstellar objects come hurling through space towards us, they have to go through the Kuiper Belt. And as they do that, they break up and become smaller and typically fall into the gravity of one of the gas giants before it even comes close to Earth to do any harm. And John and I came up with a simple notion that what if the Kuiper Belt was actually a military installation by the Galactic Star Alliance used to quarantine all solar systems that have life that's too hostile to interact with the rest of the galaxy. And that's the impetus for the whole story. And in the first few pages, a catastrophe happens at CERN, which is the leading particle physics accelerator on Earth, and leaves one survivor, this astrophysicist Bernard William Hubert. And he believes that it has to be extraterrestrial life that would have caused such a malfunction of the antimatter containment. And the rest of the world thinks he's crazy. So our journey is through Bernard on Earth trying to prove that this is not of this Earth and paving the road to redemption for his family's name, his name, and his scientific place in history. Because before this incident, he was revered in the same breath as a Carl Sagan, a Neil deGrasse, a Stephen Hawking, and now he's tarnished and disgraced. He's climbing his way back to the top. Transversely, we follow the story of the Galactic Star Alliance and our two primes that run part of the government, Crux Tuxkinbor and Pius Abercrine. And the antimatter containment that happened on Earth was due to an attack of the Kuiper Belt. And what terrorist organization was trying to do that, intergalactic terrorist organization that was trying to do that, and what was their motives, and figuring that out and understanding the ramifications of what that will mean later on. And we follow that story. And the two of them start converging very slowly. And that's what the whole series is about, is what's going to happen when these 2 points start coming closer and closer into one cohesive story.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that kind of struck me, like I say, I've read the first half, and it was the fact that you started with the first chapter is the incident at CERN, but then the second chapter is diving straight into the Galactic Star Empire and really investigating and talking about that lay of the land. and you have to, it's quite an info dump from the first initial chapters. It's a lot to take in, but because of the way that you've woven the stories, and like you say, that kind of divergence of or convergence of what the storylines, you have to really kind of think very much on your feet to kind of keep it all in your head as it's all starting to come in together. But then like I say, we had the first half of this conversation with Bob Fingerman, who managed to scale down his story into about a 20-second elevator pitch, which begs the question then, is that the joy of Heavy Metal Magazine, that you can have very different and varying approaches of story under the same banner of heavy metal, but what makes them a heavy metal story, would you say?
Yeah, I think, the fact that Dottie's and Kuiper can live in the same publication is the joy of heavy metal. And, what makes it heavy metal is really simple, is did it go farther than it would have gone published somewhere else? Did the creator give themselves the right to take it to the place that they've always wanted to, but maybe another publisher, or if they were self-publishing it, they didn't have the ability to, or the confidence to? And that's the one thing that I preach at Heavy Metal, whether it's with a new creator, an old creator, it's whatever you think is the most incredible, most horrific, most crazy thing that you think of, times that by 10. And then that's what I want you to write. And I think that, to me, is the essence of heavy metal, is really just taking it that step further, and not only in the art and not only in the words, but in the execution of what it is. Like, you want hell with a hot, girl in a cartoon written by, one of the most prolific cartoonists there are. You get that at heavy metal. You don't get that anywhere else.
Sure. And also the fact that this is a story which is incredibly large, expansive, it's epic. This is obviously something that you've been working on for quite some time. What's been the timeline of putting Beyond Kuiper together? How long has this been kind of percolating in your head?
Yeah, so John and I started writing the world in 2015. So it's been a while. UT Atkin, our illustrator, who's a godsend, lives out in Turkey, and we've actually never spoken on the phone together. And I realized a few weeks ago I did an interview for Publishers Weekly, and as we were talking about it, I realized that the creation of this book is a science fiction tale to a H.P. Lovecraft, to a Wells or a Roddenberry. The idea that we could create a book with art that's so poignantly specific to the story, with somebody on the other side of the planet who doesn't speak the same language as you, and you can use a computer machine to talk, that's science fiction, which is so cool. And that took 2 years to put together. Behind me here, you can see these are all the planets of the galactic star lines.
Oh, wow.
That's Bernard on Europa. That's the Nomad being built at Outer Limits. And all of these things, were created and designed through Skype and through email, and never once on the phone or in person, which is so cool to me when you think about it. And that all that art and all that world building took 2 to 3 years. And I refused for us to write a page of the novel until we had a 9th grade history class worth of material.
Oh, wow.
Written. We have over 400 pages in a Google Drive of everything that you could ever want to know about every character. And you could read that document. And once you've read that, how our characters are going to react just by reading the setup. You wouldn't even have to finish the chapter. You'll just know how they would act, because we've fleshed out the understanding of those characters' modus operandi so deeply and overtly, that the story is less of us creating it and more of us just telling history at this point, which is really fun. And then the audiobook, we did with one of my really close friends, Kyle Perrin, and him and I wrote 22 original records. So that audiobook that has music is original music that him and I wrote for every chapter, and then a couple of bonus records. And then he sound designed and mixed and narrated the whole book. And we had George C. Romero, the son of George A. Romero, and Dylan Sprouse have two fun key characters. And the audio experience is, it's an audio movie. You can close your eyes and you can see the movie. And, that is my, homage to Jim Dale and the Harry Potter books, because while those didn't have the sound effects or the music, and that's my creative, expression that I wanted to do that, he did 455 voices across 7 books. And
wow.
You can feel the movie when you listen to those. And that's what I wanted to do with our audiobook, because I wanted you to feel the movie through your ears.
Sure. I mean, I think also I'm part of what I love about comics is the creative collaboration between artist and writer. How an artist can take a story and help embellish it and evolve it, and then the writer can bounce off that. When I'm trying to work out how to pronounce this first, is it Jermaine?
Herman.
I want to say Ponce. Okay. When Herman came on, what did he contribute to the story? What did he bring to your ideas, and how did those kind of evolve and morph going forward?
So, I mean, to take that even a step back, our managing editor, Ricardo Lanera, is the one who read my initial, pitch or chapter for it and knew Herman was the right artist to put on. And that's like that's like if there's any baseball fans out there, that's the off the box, off the scorecard, stat that is so undervalued, is the editor understanding what artist to pair with the writer. And, I at Heavy Metal, even though I write a couple of the stories, I'm very clear with my team that I'm a writer when I'm writing and not the CEO. And you need to manage me just like you'd manage any other writer. And I don't want any special treatment or anything like that. So when Ricardo, brought Herman to the table, it just felt like the perfect fit. It was the right type of art. And then to your point, I don't write my comics in traditional comic book format. I write screenplays. And to your point, I love, when I write my novels, it starts and stops with me, or starts and stops with John. There's no paneling. There's no other person that can help bad writing, right? Or help tell a story better. But when you're doing a graphic novel or a comic, it's a village. It's a team that comes together to create this amazing expression of a story. And I hold that pretty true. And I am not an artist. I'm a writer. So I like to tell my artists, hey, if you want me to panel these, I will, but I'd much rather give you a screenplay and let you tell me how you see these words. And most of the artists that I work with, be it Herman with Darkwing, or a female protagonist story that's coming out next year called The Adventures of Adrian James with Geraldo Borges, both of them like to just get the screenplay and imagine what the panels are themselves. And I love giving that, creative liberty to them to have them tell me what they see from the words. And all the paneling and all of the way that the story flows is a combination of Herman and Ricardo working together to take the words on the page that I give them and turn them into imagery.
When those images came back to you, then when those pages started coming in, did they make any influence on the story that you felt that you wanted to tell, in terms of just the tone that they were producing, or just the way that they were kind of sort of the way that they were expressing your world? That can often kind of trigger, and you can spin off and kind of reimagine what your initial concept was. How did the story evolve from that original original spark that you had to what you eventually came up with?
I think what I was saying before, when you want to have the people that work at heavy metal just dial things up to 10, it wouldn't necessarily be that they changed my thought on any of the words and the way I wanted the story. They just took the concepts and the words and dialed them up to 10. And, you know, from the way Benedict Gunn looks and how the Darkwing and the sails work. And, you know, we spent 2 months before we even started paneling on designing the Darkwing. And I brought John into this also, and he helped me with the orbital mechanics and understand, you know, this is way more fantastical than anything in Beyond Kuiper, just in terms of, like, you know, a planet having an exoskin that's 5 times the mass of the planet that, you know, helps it glide through space is fringely science fiction and more fantasy. But, you know, we tried to bring it as close to something real as we could. It took a while for us to, you know, nail that design, understand how that could work. And by doing that, by the end of it, Herman was like, got it. And the pages, I mean, we're right now, you know, done inking, I would say, the first 60 of 150 pages. And
that was going to be my next question: how far it's been in production? Whereabouts are you?
Novel's written. The whole script for the 160 pages are done, and we're about just under 40% done with all the pages. Maybe actually just over. But I would say, you know, to that point, every page has 7 or 8 panels, about 50 some odd pages, right? So we're looking in the hundreds of panels drawn. And I'd say I could count on 2 hands how many panels we had him redraw. He gets the story so well. And, you know, that to me is, like, again, the scorecard of Ricardo just knowing the right person to match with. And, you know, that's what I pride the most with my editors. If it's, you know, Joseph Illage on Tarna or Cold Dead War and the artists and people he's bringing in, or bring in Christopher Priest for Entropy and bring in the right artists there, or if it's, you know, Morgan Rosenblum who's bringing the right artist team to do a series we have called Vassador and Crunch, or he had a short in the magazine that was written by Steve Orlando, Tim Seeley, called String Theory. And, you know, the story was cool, and now the story's sick because of the way the art brings it to life. And that, to me, is what a great editor does. It's the pre-game warm-ups that are most important. You know, editing a story and words and art is a big piece of it, but putting the right team together and making sure that the words and the visuals congeal in the right way, that's what I think we have the best editing team in the game.
Sure. I think when you talk to a number of people about Heavy Metal magazine, or when you mention heavy metal, the film is certainly the thing that a lot of people think about. And a lot of the conversations that we've been having in 2020 about what content we can expect to enjoy next year is going to be a lot of animation because of the way that production is happening. I'm really curious as to whether you feel if heavy metal could return to an animation, whether it could come back as a film. The reason why I ask is because of the different stories and the different storytellers you've got, whether it would be the anthology that we saw back in 1980 when the first film came out, or could you see, because of the size and the cinematic scope of what you've done with Beyond Tarna, whether it would be a Beyond Tarna film? Beyond
Kuiper.
Yeah, it's Beyond Kuiper. Sorry, I am to like the Tarna story.
Beyond Tarna.
Beyond Kuiper. I do apologize.
No, but you know, I would say for anybody that's that's curious, excited, interested, you know, not only are we going to return to the silver screen with animations, but, you know, we're going to roll out a massive slate over the next 5 years. And we're going to be doing a ton of adaptations. We have an amazing producing partner, Diga Studios, that's helped us, you know, breathe to life a ton of projects, including our narrative podcast series. If anybody listens to Wonderwork, you know, the guy flying through space that looks like Jack Kirby's art right there is a character named Mortimer from season 1 of Wonderwork. We have, about 4 other projects in development right now that we're going to be announcing next year from a TV film standpoint. So for me, it's less about if we're going to, and more about how many are we going to do. I'm looking at heavy metal and the brand and the gravitas that the last 44 years have granted us as the jump off point to a science fiction entertainment brand that can transcend print, audio, video. It has the same feeling and evokes the same aspirations that Disney does, but for a much older, much more science fiction, fantasy driven focus, and that's what we want to do.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I'm interested to see if there will be a Dottie's Inferno chapter in a future heavy metal animation film. I'm sure Bob would be interested to see that possibly come to life as a part of the anthology.
100%. I would say, the anthology animation, we'll get there, but let's explore some of our stories as their own shows first.
Sure. I mean, I think that's the thing that's kind of gotten me excited about heavy metal over the last year and a half. When I started to see the announcements roll out, when I saw about Virus, and when I saw about Wonderworks as well, it started to become very. It wasn't a surprise to me. It was the ambition, and it was a case of, it wasn't that you were branching out. It was almost like heavy metal was already there, especially when, like you say, the different styles that have been throughout the magazine over the years, and we talk about heavy metal sort of testing the boundaries. But it's always been testing the boundaries. And I think that's what's so exciting about the magazine. And I'm certainly excited about seeing what happens beyond now, because everything that we've seen in the last year and a half, it's groundwork it feels like groundwork for even bigger and better things. So I'm very much excited to see what's coming in 2021. Can you tease about anything that you're excited about? Certainly, as we get into the new year, and what heavy metal's got coming down the line.
Yeah, I mean, I think, stories like Sun Eater and Darkwing and, Beyond Kuiper and Dottie's Inferno and some of the stuff that, we started front loading in 2020 and have started coming out and are in full swing, expect bigger announcements and adaptations and other things. And we're working on that supply chain of getting new stories out to our fans and to new fans, and taking what's on the page and imagining what it could be on the screen or on audio. And we just want to tell as many great stories as we can in as many mediums as our fan base allots us the ability to.
Sure. I think the challenge as well is reintroducing heavy metal to a fan base, because the way that that will be done for comics, for print, and for the medias that you talk about is either at Comic-Cons or in comic book shops. Now, heavy metal, obviously, it is concentrating a lot on direct retail through the mail order service. Comic-Cons, obviously, it's going to be harder to get the word out. Let's talk about the challenges then of not only honoring the fan base of the existing magazine and that incredible legacy that it has, but it's a case of getting new eyeballs on these new projects. can we talk about the challenges of that and what you're doing to overcome that? Because at the end of the day, it is a case of banging the drum as loud as you possibly can.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. And I think, for us, it's taking creators, like Steve Orlando, who it's a great example, right? Big name right now in comics, was doing Wonder Woman, doing other awesome stories. His new Image book just did 50,000 of its #1. And, bringing him in and being like, what story in your voice do you want to tell that's dialed up higher than anything else that you've told so far? And that's what Star Wars is, which is coming out next year. And, rinsing and repeating that model with creators today that are, speaking to today's audience and telling those creators, hey, come to this playground and take away all of the barriers, all of the fail safes, all the safeguards, take them off and tell the story that you in your head have always wanted to tell, but you've been curbing it a little bit based on whatever other publishers you've worked with and what their guardrails are. Take those off, come here and tell that story that you really want to tell. And that's what we've been doing with a ton of creators. And I think, to your point, that's the only thing you can do right now, when you're trying to get a younger generation, is use the tenets of what got you here with the creators that speak to today's audience.
Sure. I mean, certainly the names that you've gotten on board, they are ones that get enough eyeballs onto the titles that you're bringing out, and certainly, like I say, the ones that you're doing, I'm very excited about, and I wish Heavy Metal magazine in 2021 even bigger and bolder success, because you're taking chances, and I think that's the thing that is sorely lacking in comics at the moment. There's imagination there, but it's not being used, in my opinion. There are some publishers out there which are kind of doing some interesting things with distribution. I mean, TKO are doing a cool thing with the way that they're getting books out, but no one's really kind of letting rip. And I think that's what Heavy Metal has always done, and I'm looking forward to seeing more from the publisher. Thank you so much indeed for coming on. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Can you give us the best places for people to go to find out more about Heavy Metal? Where is the first stop shop to find out the newest stories from Heavy Metal?
Yeah, I mean, heavymetal.com is super easy, and you can subscribe to our newsletter that comes out twice a week. Heavy Metal on Instagram, at Heavy Metal Inc. at Twitter. Those three places you'll be able to find out all information of what's coming up. And, podcasts like this, we're trying to get the word out as many places as we can.
Excellent. Matthew, it's been a pleasure. I'm going to bring Bob on very quickly to say thank you, because he has been lingering in the background and watching. Just to say to the pair of you, Matthew, Bob, it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you so much indeed for coming on and talking about the books and the projects you've got coming up. Enjoy the weekend, sir.
Thank you.
Excellent.
No, it's been awesome, and yeah, I mean, the things that Bob's doing with Dottie's and his prose novels are, exactly what Heavy Metal needs in terms of diversity, and the stuff that we're going to be putting out next year, I think, is going to turn heads just as much as the stuff that we put out this year.
Finally, I'm a diversity hire.
Yes. I also quite liked the comment in the private chat when we were talking about Dottie possibly being part of a Heavy Metal anthology animation. He went, yes, I'm excited about that. I'm down with that. Yeah, so looking forward to seeing that happening on screen. Bob, Matthew, thank you very much indeed for coming on.
Thank you, Leonard.
Excellent stuff.
Cheers.
Thank you. So there you go. Yeah, do go check out Heavy Metal, heavymetal.com and Heavy Metal Inc. on their social medias. Well worth checking out the books. Do check out the interview I did yesterday as well with Stephanie Phillips, because what she's doing with Tana, the last Tarkarian, it looks incredible. It's, again, very much like what Matthew is doing with his books. it's very epic and very cinematic. And yeah, I think if you like your stories big and bold and very much metal, heavy metal is the place to go. Excellent stuff indeed. Right, so that's our show for today. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. As you heard halfway through, this has been a full episode for our Patreon supporters, and thank you so much indeed for everyone who allows us to keep doing what we do and keep the lights on for our for the website and for the Patreon, keeping us doing what we do. Do support us, and you can watch the full episodes if you are a Patreon supporter at any of the tiers, even at the lowest tier. If you go to patreon.com/Englishman SDCC, and of course, do like and subscribe and comment anything that you want to spread the word about what we do on the show. Do let us know. We are going to be doing an episode next week, which is going to be with Chris Carter from Global Comics. But we're also going to be looking back at the virtual conventions as well. So for the first half of the episode next Sunday is going to be about our interview with Chris Carter. But the second half is going to be about the virtual cons and about the landscape of 2020 in the age of COVID. What has been the highs and lows, where the energy has gone in terms of the virtual events that have happened, because there definitely seems to have been a real attempt to make things work. And then there's been some which it just, the air seems to have gone out of the balloon. We want to examine why, and we'll be doing that on next week's show. We may be doing another show before the end of the year, but that's down to gathering some of the forces, because what I'd like to do is try and get some of our regulars, some of our people that join us on a regular basis in the audience, friends and family, you could say, of Talkin Con, to come on and look back over the last year, because if anything, this is one that will be remembered for not necessarily all the right reasons. But at the end of the day, we have to build from what we've learned in 2020. Thank you very much indeed for your company. I hope you've enjoyed it. Don't forget, the audio version of this podcast will be going up on our audio platforms tomorrow. So you'll be able to find it on SoundCloud, on Apple, on where else? Spotify as well. I'll be editing this bit out, as you could probably tell. But you'll find it on those three tomorrow from midday on Monday. And then the full episode will be available for everybody on Wednesday at midday GMT as well. So that's our schedule. Join us next week as we are going to be talking global comics with Chris Carter on Sunday, the 20th of December. Thank you very much indeed for everyone for watching. Hope you've enjoyed the show. And I'll see you next Sunday for another Talkin Con, a cup of tea with an Englishman in San Diego. From me to you, take care.
Thank you.